I did a Bill and Ted impression for the Excellent Adventure episode.
Yeah.
What do I do this time?
Let's do it again.
Dude.
My name is Adeline K. McMurray.
My name's...
This is...
Jackson William Henry Aloysius McMurray the Third. And we are...
I already said what my name is.
The No Nerds Allowed.
No Nerds Allowed.
That's better. Okay, that's a better version.
Yeah,
of
you'll
that,
make that. You'll make that good when you edit it, right? You'll like edit it so that it's good.
Right, so it's funny.
And it's like funny. You could do that. Yeah, you could do that in editing, right?
Yeah, for sure.
You took a class on that.
Do that in post.
Okay, great.
So Adeline, movie theaters are open again.
Yes.
And I am lucky enough to have a drive-in theater nearby.
Yeah.
And the first post-quarantine movie I went to theaters to see was The Personal History of David Copperfield, starring Dev Patel.
Was that movie good?
It was pretty good.
Good. I was interested.
This
yeah,
is
it
not
fun.
This is not related to the topic of the episode, but it's a conversation we were having that I wanted to get on air. Which is Little Women was a smash success. And now David Copperfield...
We went crazy for those miniature girls. We just loved it.
And I feel like there's a new wave of just straightforward, high-quality literary adaptations coming. What do you want to see,
I'm
Adeline?
totally here for it. I want to fucking see a good Frankenstein movie. Fucking please. Like, I don't want a gritty reboot. I don't want, what if fucking Victor and the monster were in love? I don't want that. I just want you to take the book and make a movie out of it because it's a good book and no one can do it. No one's done
Adeline,
it yet.
Imagine if they did that. Think about this for a second. Just a lady writing letters the whole time? Sounds like a boring movie to me.
What are you referencing?
Frankenstein. The book is structured that it's all letters that somebody writes. It's an epistolary novel.
No. No, I've read Frankenstein. It is in someone writing letters. A lot of it's Victor writing. They're not letters. It's like his journal.
Are you super sure?
Because it's Victor Frankenstein.
It's an epistolary novel.
Yeah, he is writing it. Well, because at first it's from Victor's perspective, and then it's from Victor's perspective as the monster tells him his story, and then it's the sea captain when Victor is dying, and that's the only time we shift narrators for some reason, is when Victor dies and the sea captain's like, I'm gonna finish this book. But I don't think it's letters. I think it's just him writing in the journal. Right. If I remember, it might be letters, but he dies, so I don't know who he's sending the letters to, because as he is writing, his wife is already dead, and most of his family is already dead, so I don't know who he would be sending the letters to. Anyway, I don't want your fucking Hollywood bullshit. Just make a good movie out of this book. It's all I want. Because Frankenstein got a bad rap because the first movie of it in the 30s or whatever was nothing like the book. It was just like, we need a horror movie. This is spooky. We'll do that. Right. And they did it. But then that's forever the only image of Frankenstein we have for movies, is that adaptation that was kind of a bad adaptation. Right. So now anytime anybody makes a Frankenstein movie, they're not making a Frankenstein movie out of the book. It has to come from that movie. And even if they try to combine the two, they don't marry very well because the book is so, like, God, like, it's just the monster, like, pouring out his soul about how he doesn't fit into the world and how he so badly wants to be a friend of humanity, but they see him as a demon. And then you have the original movie where it's just, like, a guy with bolts in his neck. And it's like, I just want a good Frankenstein movie.
I don't think that counts, because I feel like that very much fits into the monster movie category. We've got the dark universe rolling, so... I mean...
That's fair, but that's gonna be bad.
No, well, Adeline, did you see Invisible Man? Because Invisible Man fucking rips shit.
No, I heard Invisible Man was good. Yeah, I've heard that.
We talked a lot in the Rogue One episode about visual effects. and Invisible Man is like some of the best like practical VFX work I've seen in a really long time.
Cause she like dumps flour on him or something.
Yeah, well, but it's also like all the stuff just like being manipulated by an invisible dude looks super good and real, and like there's all this stuff. I mean, not to talk
about the Invisible Man.
No, not to give it away, but like there's a bit at the end where like his suit is like malfunctioning and it's like sort of flickering sort of on and off like different parts of him, and it looks fucking insanely good. It's like really, really impressive.
Oh, is he in a suit?
Yeah.
I thought he was a ghost.
He's got an invisibility suit. It's like a totally different...
Oh, that's a little bit... Gotcha. That's a little bit stupider, but it's fine.
No, you haven't seen it.
That's fair. I thought it was just... Never mind what I thought the Invisible Man was about.
So what do you think...
It's just a guy, and you can't see him.
Okay, here's a better question. A more interesting... Because asking, like, what straight-ahead literary adaptation do you want to see is not that interesting of a question, because the answer is kind of one word. It's like, just which one you want.
Yeah. And then I tell you. And then you tell me that I'm wrong.
Right, exactly. If you had to pick, would you rather go back to the early 90s or the late 90s and early 2000s when every literary adaptation had to be about teens for some reason? Or would you rather just have straight-ahead literary adaptations for a while?
I just want straight-ahead literary adaptations because I'm so good. I like that early 2000 teens, like this is kind of related, but like where we just like took stories and we like made them gritty. Like we had like the gritty Hansel and Gretel, we had gritty Snow White and the Huntsman, we had gritty Maleficent, just like everything. We were like, what if we took a classic story and made it like skewed or twisted, skewed point of view? Like what if it like murder and it was like scary, and it's like I just don't fucking give a shit. Please,
what does that have to do with Clueless?
Make normal movies. No, because that's the same kind of thing. It's taking a story and like skewing it in some way to like make like people more interested in it when people are just already interested in those stories because they're good stories, you know? Like
I would argue that
I don't think
most
you need
of the time they aren't.
Okay, but like what if Jackson, someone walked up to you and they're like, do you want like a really good, pretty, interesting and well shot out, well stylized like movie about Othello, or would you like one where a bunch of teens in a high school are Othello instead?
I mean, I don't know. See, I would say that I would like the pretty one, but also I'm not most people. So
I mean, we could see, here's the thing also. We could also just have both.
It's true.
Is the
That's
thing.
True.
But that's not your question.
I'm just
I would rather like
Go ahead.
Are we done talking? Is that the end of the podcast? What was that?
Okay, so speaking of new movies in theaters, by the way, David Copperfield was good. Benedict Wong rocks the house. Benedict Wong's probably my favorite actor.
Good. Great.
Bill and Ted Face the Music was literally... There were 3 movies that opened with theaters, and they were Bill and Ted 3, The New Mutants, and The Personal History of David Copperfield. How weird is that?
Yeah. What a weird collection of movies. Because first of all, I didn't even know about Copperfield till like the day before it came out, because like for some reason that's when they started advertising it, was like a day before it came out, which was probably smart. Compared to what New Mutants did?
It's right.
Oh, yeah.
Because I knew about it, and I, seen that trailer, and I, knew it was on the horizon at some point, but it wasn't until I, opened up the AMC app to be like, what's coming? It was like, oh, David Copperfield's, right now.
Yeah. Jackson, did you watch New Mutants yet?
No, I still haven't. I'm trying to save money a little bit. I gotta see it,
No, I totally get it. I totally understand, but I want to know, and I don't. I think I want to know before I watch it, because I want to know. How did that end up being?
Apparently it's super
bad. Did they do it? Oh, hell yeah. That's
what's
my
so
dream.
funny to me about it is that Bill Sienkiewicz, who is the illustrator on the New Mutants run that movie is definitely like very indebted to, has been like apparently very closely involved in the movie. And I've seen him on Twitter like constantly like stumping for this movie, being like, hey, we're so proud of this, and it's really incredible, and, you know, it's been a long, hard road, but we put in the work, and we're doing this, and, like, everyone was like, okay, like, Bill Sienkiewicz is, like, excited, but, like, and now, like, it came out, and it's got, like, a 25% on Rotten Tomatoes, and everybody hates it.
Yeah. There's, like, they totally... like, I want to say it's not their fault that it's a bad movie because they just got screwed over like 12 billion times, but at the same time, it definitely is their fault. So, like, I don't, like, sorry, like, maybe, like, there was no universe where this came out and it was a perfect movie. There's just no way in hell.
I read, it's funny because for a long time, the way they were trying to spin it was like, oh, you know, like, it's just not working out. It's fine. Like, everything's still good. We're just doing, like, a lot more reshoots than a normal movie would. Because, you know, we have our shit together, but it's like, if anything, it's probably good that we're doing those reshoots because it means that we're, like, self-aware enough to know when something
maybe we'll
working.
get a better movie out of it.
Yeah, like, you guys, come on. That was what the marketing was like when they were, like, announcing all this
You
stuff.
guys, please, come on. Just give us a shot, man.
Basically, when I read this thing that was like an oral history of the New Mutants, it was an article on Esquire, I think, and it was just based on like what people are saying now. It was like textbook. Like the director wanted one thing, but the studio didn't think it was smart, and he had a much bigger, more creative idea, but the studio was freaked out by it, so they made him reshoot it.
Yeah,
like total textbook, like studio troubled production kind of things. But the only thing that was interesting to me was that the first round of reshoots, quote unquote, apparently because the movie's budget was decently low, because, you know, it's obviously doesn't have the same budget as like a regular X-Men movie or an Iron Man or whatever. The studio literally basically told them to start over once they had their first cut. They were like, we are willing, like, basically, you've spent probably, like, $15 million on this already. Go ahead, just do another 15, try again. It's like...
just put everything in the toilet.
Put
15 million in the toilet and just start over.
They were just like, it's fine. Just try again. We'll see if we like the next one better.
Well, because I remember from the, like, very first, like, previews that we were getting that first time when they thought that they were going to be able to make a movie, that it was, like, a horror movie. Like, that was, like, their take. It was, like, it's like superheroes, but it's, like, a horror take on superheroes. And we're like, okay, all right, cool. And now they're like, it's a superhero movie, please watch it. It's like, okay.
Yeah, exactly.
It's okay.
And then, you know, it seems like it has normal. Like a little bit of like genre trappings to it. They're like, oh, it's a little bit scary. But the first trailer, like, definitely was like, this is a horror movie. It will scare you. And I do not feel worried that I'm going to be scared by the current state of New Mutants. Except in terms of how I feel about the industry, that's pretty scary.
That's scary stuff.
In this economy?
It's not good. It's not a good world out there.
Oh, the only thing I'll be scared of is the coronavirus.
What if the scariest beast is actually man? Frankenstein.
Okay.
And do you want to talk about the movie?
Yeah, Ian said he liked New Mutants. I don't know. I haven't seen it. I'm parroting what other people have said.
This is our opinion about a movie we haven't seen yet.
Yeah. So we should say the two of us have only ever seen the first Bill and Ted. Before this podcast in the last few days, both of us watched Bill and Ted's Bogus Journey, and both of us watched Bill and Ted Face the Music. The topic of the podcast is still going to be Face the Music as much as we can help it, but we are going to spend some time talking about Bogus Journey.
We're dipping our toes into Bogus Journey.
Yeah, because Adeline doesn't like it, and I think I might actually like it better than I like the original one, frankly.
It's just... I still think the original one is my favorite. The sequel was just so weird. Compared to, we talked about the first one is what's so nice about the first one is it's such a straightforward plot that we, just get going and we just start having fun with the thing that we set up. But then Bogus Journey, we just do... You never figure out what we're doing. We're doing it, but, it's...
There's literally...
You know... Okay, so the guy comes back. He doesn't like the perfect future. Right. He sends a robot to kill Bill and Ted. Who is this guy? He's an ex-gym teacher. That's all we know about him.
Some weird extremist. We don't need to know. Whatever. Okay, hold on. Why are you praising...
No. I was about to say we don't need to know. It doesn't matter. But it's just... He's evil guy. Right. But then... So we send the evil robots back. The evil robots kill Bill and Ted. But then they're also gonna kill the babes. And also... They're gonna tank the performance, is the idea.
Yeah, they're just trying to fuck up their lives.
Yeah, after they've killed them already. But, so the movie is just Bill and Ted trying to get back in order to stop the robots. But the things that we do in order to do that make no
are
sense.
awesome.
It's fun. No. Don't get me wrong. It's fun. It's just so different from the original. First of all, they die. Second of all, they go to hell. They die
straight up. They talk to death.
But then they go to heaven. It's like, okay, after they go to hell, when they go to heaven is not a surprise after they go to hell. What is a surprise is that there are Martians in heaven, and we bring Martians back from the dead and on Earth in order to build horrifying robots in order to kill the robots that
those
are
robots
bad.
Rip so hard. Those are the best cinematic robots.
They're so scary, Jackson. Their hands, they're all weird and
they're
short
so good.
And they're so scary. This movie would have fucked me up as a kid. They're terrifying. Ted looks like the little girl who comes out of the well in that one horror movie. It's so... The Ring.
She comes out of TV, but whatever.
Why did we... No, but she comes out of well in the video, and then she comes out of your TV when you play the video.
Okay, I'm not sure. I don't know.
Anyway, it's terrifying and it's scary.
Okay.
But, it's...
The robots are good. The Martians are good. There's a part where the two Martians combine into one big Martian, and they turn into a horrifying flesh ball in the parking lot of a hardware store.
Yeah, I like the big Martian more than I like the two little Martians. I will say that.
Right.
He's got Harry and the Henderson vibes. I don't like his giant ass. That's not a thing that I like.
Yeah, it's cool. They've got a butt crack that goes all the way up and down the length of their back, and it's really good.
Yeah, it's great. It's great. Good stuff. And they have that shot where he's building the robots in the car, and they keep just getting to a reaction shot of the guy in the costume just jiggling up and down as he's building stuff, and it's just so disturbing, and I hate it. It's not.
I think it's a really good movie.
I feel like I'm going too hard against this movie because it's fun. It's fine. I don't not like it. I'm just saying it's so weird and so different from the original movie that it just wasn't. I even knew the basic plot because I've seen bits and pieces of it. I'm I know that they die and that they're trying to stop the evil robots from ruining their lives, but I wasn't prepared for all the things that we do.
So, if I'm remembering correctly, if I could just lay it out, they die, and so first they just talk to Death. Death is hey, I'm here to take you to the afterlife, and then they give him a wedgie and they run away. And I'm trying to remember exactly how they end up in hell, because it's not like they just died and went to hell. It's
so here's what happens. So Missy is into seances, I guess.
Right. That's right. They get banished to hell by Missy.
Yeah, because they're dead and they're trying to get somebody to help them to fight the robots. So they're like, they possess their dad and it doesn't work. And so they're like,
Right.
okay, well, let's go to Missy, so maybe Missy will help. But so Missy's having a seance. So they interrupt the seance and they're like, Missy, it's Bill and Ted, we're like totally dead and like you gotta like come and help us. And so she freaks the fuck out and banishes them to hell.
Yeah, it's really good.
And
there's this part where they're in hell and they're like both experiencing their own personal worst fears. And there's this shot where they like run back towards each other screaming and then meet up and Ted goes, Bill, hell sucks. I just think that's so funny. Like he's surprised about it. It's so good.
The first part is that, well, they're like at the like beginning of hell where they're just like on a rock and they like see the devil. And so it's like all like the like devil imagery and they're like, dude, I like this, Ted. And then they go to hell and then he's like, hell sucks, dude. It's great. Yeah, that part's great.
So good. Anyway, then they go to heaven and there's this great moment where they're like trying to figure out how to get in. So they like pull 3 people off to the side and like steal their clothes. And there's this moment where Bill is just like, Ted, we're in heaven and we just mugged 3 people.
Yeah.
Which is
like,
really,
we better get out of here before
funny.
we ruin it for everybody else.
Yeah, it's so good.
And then they talk to God and they're just like, yo, we mugged 3 people? Sorry, bro.
It's a good movie.
But then God gives them like a thing, and then we never use the thing that God gives them.
Oh, that's right. Wait, what is it that he gives him? I don't remember. I watched it yesterday.
It's like that clear, like, I watched it like 4 hours ago. It's like a clear, like, clock kind of thing that Bill, like, holds. But then as soon as we meet the Martians, they don't use it anymore. So I don't know.
I have zero memory of
what that was. Yeah,
okay.
Because they don't do it. God gives them a thing, and they don't do anything with it. You know.
But yeah, and then like the gag is like, oh, and hey God, could you send us like the best scientists in the whole universe to build a good robot to help us fight the bad robots? And God's like, hell yeah, dude, I got you. So he sends them a couple of aliens. And there's this line where Death is like, you didn't really think the best scientists in the universe would be from Earth, did you? And they're like, oh, I guess we didn't think about that. And it's like these two dudes in costumes and like weird gnarly Martian costumes. It's really good.
Weird little dwarf nightmare
and then
ass monsters.
And then at the end, their big band is fucking the 2 of them and their wives and Death on the bass. And 2 aliens on the drums, and 2 robot versions of themselves.
Who are just dancing.
Who are just dancing. And I think it's so funny. I think it's so good.
I don't know. I don't know anymore.
But anyway, that's our quick moment on Bill and Ted 2. Bill and Ted 2.
This has been
divisive.
Who knows? This has been Adeline and Jackson's bogus review.
Bogus review of Bill and Ted's Bogus Journey. Jury's still out on Bill and Ted 2. Is it good? Who's to say? Experts disagree.
Who's to say?
But
1 in 3 dentists
say it's good. That would be a really fucking... If I ever am marketing a movie, I would...
Yeah.
I would be like, 6 out of 10 dentists like this movie.
Okay, Jackson, that's gonna be for Whoa, Jesus Christ. Deadpool 3, just so you know. Yeah. I almost said Deadpool.
That's definitely
Bill and Deadpool.
Yeah. Bill, yeah, you're right. Deadpool 3 is definitely gonna have like 9 out of 10 dentists recommend Deadpool.
Yeah, absolutely. Recommend Deadpool. But then it's like, oh, but he'll punch out, he'll shoot your teeth out, because it's Deadpool.
With a gun.
He's scary.
You want to know what's interesting? What's interesting about Deadpool is that, like, the marketing of that movie was so much built around, like, oh, he says fuck, he kills guys, and it's, like, violent and huge, and there's boobs in it, and, like, we're going out of our way to, like, really sell on the point, like, how vulgar it is. But in reality, that movie is, like, a pretty regular R-rated movie. It's, like, not especially bawdy, I guess. I don't know.
It's, like... Well, because it's a Marvel movie, so they're like, oh, it's the bad Marvel movie. And I feel like that also comes out of, like, the stupid DC criticism that's like, oh, DC's dark and gritty and Marvel's for babies. So I feel like it was like, oh, here's the Marvel one where he says fuck and he shoots people. And it's like, whoa. But it's like it's pretty good. It's not that.
Yeah, it's
disturbing.
like literally,
I like
it's like
feet. It's funny.
yeah, it's like there's more blood in it, and he does swear.
Yeah.
And then there are some boobs in it. But
Yeah.
it's like
but
the same could be said of like pretty much every R-rated action movie ever.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, the blood isn't even that bad, because, like, I don't like...
No.
I'm fine with blood. I don't like, inside of the body stuff. I don't like that stuff. So, like, it was just, like, a lot of blood. And I was like, oh, that's fine. Yeah. I'm fine. Get good, Deadpool. And then I fucking flipped him off, and he came out of the TV because he was breaking the fourth wall, and he punched me.
Knows he's in a movie.
And then I got to sue him for a hate crime.
Wow. What was he discriminating against you for?
Being a woman.
That's
not what a hate crime is. Well, I hated it.
He said that. He's like, I don't like you because you're a woman. And then
you're a woman, not even because you don't like the movie. You flipped me off. Specifically, just because you're a woman. And then I sued him, and I won. Yeah. And that's why there's not a Deadpool 3. It's because I won that lawsuit. You're welcome. I saved humanity from Deadpool 3.
If we move on to Bill and Ted Face the Music, the first post-coronavirus feature theatrical release, we seem to be torn in the opposite direction on this movie. Because you seem to be pretty into it, and I was fairly unimpressed.
Yeah, I just, like, I don't want to say it's, like, the best movie of the year, but, like, just, like, it was, like, what I expected it to be. Like, it's pretty funny. Overall, it's just really nice. Like, we talked about how much we hate the word wholesome when describing Bill and Ted, but, like, it is pretty wholesome. Like, I think we do some fun things. The special effects get a little bad. It gets very green screeny, but like it's not like it's not perfect, but like it's fun, and I really liked it. I cried.
I guess honestly, I think like the last, and you know, obviously spoiler alert for this movie, it's still a fairly new release that not a lot of people have seen. To me, I think the ending really soured a lot of what I liked about it. Because I was really weirded out. Because, I mean, look, at the end of Bill and Ted 2, it's like, they played the song at the right time, and now they fulfilled their destiny. Like, the world worked, right? Like, everything, they've fulfilled, like, the whole part of this. Like, the story's completed, sort of, you know?
The whole thing, they did it.
Yeah, and then Bill and Ted 3 is sort of saying, like, oh, but actually, that wasn't it. And now it's 30 years later, and they still haven't actually fulfilled their destiny, even though they thought they should have by now. And that's sort of the driving, like, emotional conflict of the movie. Which I like. I think it is interesting in that it sort of speaks to the, like, Gen X experience of, like, growing up and being, like, young, dumb, and full of cum, and like wanting to change the world and being angry about things, and like and then just sort of not really doing that, and then like being like 45 and being like, well, I guess we kind of didn't do what we kind of thought we were gonna do.
Guess I gotta get an office job now.
Yeah, exactly. It speaks to that sort of cultural experience in a way that I think is really sort of smart and interesting. In the sense that it's like Bill and Ted literally were told they were going to fix everything in the world, and then they just kind of didn't. And they're like, but we were supposed to. Whatever happened with that? Yeah. You know? And
why didn't we fix everything?
Yeah, why didn't that happen like we thought it would?
Why didn't do that? Why is the environment still bad?
And I think, and so I like that as an idea. I like them like still trying, and all the stuff where they're like going into the future and talking to their future selves and stuff, I think is great. And I think the idea of they don't do it by themselves, they do it with the help of their next generation of their kids, of like sort of Gen Z, is cool too. I think all that stuff is good. I'm really annoyed by how much sci-fi rule establishing there is in this movie. Because what I love so much about the first two, what I love so much about the first two is how fast and loose they are with everything. Like, interesting, funny time travel stuff, but at the end of the day, it's like it requires basically no explanation, right?
Yeah.
And then you cut to Bill and Ted 3, and it's like, oh, the universe is unraveling, and normally the rules are Prisoner of Azkaban rules, but just right now, only right now, it's like Star Trek rules where you can change the past. And also, like, some people, for some reason, we don't know the past, but here's why we don't know the past. And some people think that the world changed because Bill and Ted died, and some people, it's like, I don't give a fuck. Like, just have it be like, they didn't do it yet. They still gotta do it. They don't know how they're gonna do it. If it were me, I would clean it all up. I would be like, they come to the future.
Yeah.
Those people are like, yo, you didn't do it yet. You gotta do it, because, like, you have to. Like, because, like, look. And they're like, fuck, you're right. We do really gotta do it. But they, like, add all these weird stakes where they're like, the universe is unraveling and anything could happen. You know? And, like, I don't like that. I don't think it needs it. And it really, really, like, I think just bogs down the movie and, like, more bullshit than it needs to function. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, I totally get that, because, like, the first two movies really are, like I kind of wish that they kind of did what they try to do with, like, the open narration where the daughters are like, so our dads thought that they did the thing, but then they didn't, so let's go. Like, you feel like that's gonna be all the, like, prerequisite that there's gonna be. But, like, I wish they would have just pulled, like, the original and done a Rufus, where it's like, this is the future. It's pretty great, but it almost wasn't. And then just, like, fucking go. And, like, and not totally. To be, like, the industry is the true monster. But, like, honestly, I don't know. I do feel like we're kind of living in a time where, like, people, especially, like, with sci-fi and stuff, like, people have a really high expectation for sci-fi, and, like, because so many sci-fi things exist with such clear rules and such clear like lore around them, like, when something tries to, like, ignore the rules, I feel like people kind of get upset about it. Like, I feel like they felt like they had to explain things more, or else people would be like, oh, that's a fucking plot hole, bruh, bad movie, like, you know.
And I mean, and don't get me wrong, I am going to see Tenet tonight, and when I sit down to that movie, I am fucking expecting him to beam rules directly into my brain for 2.5 hours. That's
put a paragraph on the screen.
Yeah, exactly. When I go to see Tenet, I want as many goddamn rules as possible, okay? But for Bill and Ted,
that's not Bill and Ted.
I am expecting... Yeah, for Bill and Ted, I am expecting a complete absence of rules. If anything, I want there to be 0 rules for Bill and Ted.
Yeah. I want them to be like, well, why don't we just put the song under this bush when we're all done, and then it'll be there, and then they'll do that. I'll be like, great, cool.
And there is a little bit of that. I love the stuff where they're, like, chasing each other around in Dave Grohl's mansion, which is funny.
Yeah. Well, I love it when they're like, how are we gonna do something that we can't remember? So they just, like, put buckets on their heads and, like, fall off a balcony, and they're like, really that'll funny. Do it.
It's like, they know everything we're gonna do, so we have to not know what we're gonna do. So they put buckets on their head and just, like, stumble around the mansion. They're like, fuck, we don't remember where they went, because we couldn't see back then. It's really good.
And then Ted's dad fucking dies 2 seconds later.
And there's a really great line too, where after they do that buckethead thing, the old Bill and Ted are like, crap, I thought they would forget to do it. Like, as if it was just gonna be different that time. It's really good.
And it's like, I do feel like there are things that this movie, I don't know about the production of this movie a lot. I feel like there are a lot of little things that this movie, like, establishes and then doesn't come back to. Like, they talk about, like, the daughters. First, I love the daughters so much. They're relatable content that I want. But when
literally me.
When they're, like, literally me.
Hating
tag
when
yourself,
people say the same thing over and over again.
Yeah. But, like, it's, they kind of touch on it where the grandpa's like, they're named after you and they're just like you. They don't do anything all day. And it's like, all they do is listen to music. And they kind of, like, pepper it in throughout the movie that, like, they don't make music the traditional way. They make music with, like, samples and stuff.
Right.
Which would be another cool, like, culture clash thing to talk about, where, like, people are like, oh, that's not music, you're just putting samples together. But, like, they're having fun and enjoying the things that they like.
Yeah.
And that could have been a thing that we could do, but we didn't. We didn't have time, or we didn't think about it, or whatever.
I mean,
whatever
they do
happened,
at the end.
We didn't do it.
But yeah.
They do at the end, and it's a payoff, but it's like a payoff for something we like kind of established, you know?
Yeah. And I mean,
like,
I think
if you were paying
as
attention
much as
and
I
you noticed that, then it's like,
Right. As much as I love Billy and Thea in this movie, on the other hand,
yeah.
because this movie very much posits them like, oh, they're just like Bill and Ted. And they're like, oh, dude, most bodacious. And you're like, I kind of would like to see, like, sort of
a little bit more modern.
Well, yeah, like, sort of a rejiggering, like, what is the modern equivalent of Bill and Ted? Like...
Yeah.
Not necessarily they act exactly like Bill and Ted, but it's like, you know, in the 80s, Bill and Ted were like, you know, these like deadbeats who can't really pay attention and like they don't really have any aspirations other than like their music career, I guess. Like it would be cool if they were both like SoundCloud rappers with like 4 followers.
Yeah.
And
they
were
do
just
very much feel like girls who have TikToks and that's just like all they do. That's very much the vibe, but again, it's not something that's like fully explored and it's something that could happen.
Yeah. It's sort of like what we were talking about with Austin Powers. I feel like a lot of what we talked about in the Austin Powers episode comes up a lot on this podcast, but like I feel like people tend to want things to be exactly the same from generation to generation. And it just isn't. And there are things that are similar, and there are sort of direct relationships between things, but...
Or things are influenced by other things.
Right. And it's like, you know, it's like we were talking about, like, in the 60s, the, like, hippie movement was, like, a counterculture, and, like, the modern counterculture in that movie would have been, like, the grunge movement, and we would have liked to see that sort of interact. And I think the sort of, like, modern-day equivalent of, like, a Bill and Ted type would not be a Bill and Ted type exactly. It would be some other cultural movement that still speaks to the same things and has the same energy, as it were.
Yeah.
But
same hat.
But, you know, not be exactly the same. That I sort of wish they would do a little bit more legwork on that front.
Yeah, well, because I think what's interesting is that if we're having that generational discussion, because we have the dad who's like the boomer generation, and then you have Bill and Ted who are like Gen X, and then you have the daughters who are like Gen Z. But so it kind of, they use the boomer dad just as like the parallel to both sets of Bill and Ted, if you will, where he thinks the same thing of both of them. Right. Where he's like, you guys are failures, you didn't do anything, and they're just like you because they're doing the same thing, quote unquote, which I think is fair. But I think Bill and Ted should not get what their daughters do until the end of the movie.
Yeah, you know, I think that would be good too.
Yeah, where they're like, yeah, we love music. Why aren't you guys making music? And they're like, well, we are making music. We're just doing it like a different way. Like that kind of like conversation where like it does set up where it's like a Bill and Ted come to like a new understanding of like their daughters after they're like, oh, you are making music. It's just different from how we make music. Like instead of them just being like, great job, daughters, you know?
Right, yeah. But I don't know. I'm torn on that because on the one hand, I think that is an interesting idea. It's like, oh, and maybe they even like have a new respect for their own fathers, like kind of knowing what it's like to not understand what your kids are doing and to worry about the viability of them like surviving, you know?
Yeah.
And it's like, oh, now that we're parents, we kind of get our own dads and maybe there could be something there. Like all that stuff is interesting and cool and I might like to see it. But on the other hand, I do really like the two of them just like weirdly being best friends with their daughters. It's like there's something really funny about that.
It is really nice. Yeah. Where they're just
like,
yeah, we love our daughters. They're super cool. It's just like, great. That's good.
And it's like they play it just perfectly where it's like that one scene where it's like the 4 of them just like hanging out and talking that like each daughter thinks the other one's dad is super cool.
Is like cooler, yeah.
Yeah, and it's like, because in reality that would never be like, oh, I think my dad's super cool and awesome and I love him very much. It's like, I like all the things he's into. It's like, that is not how people work. Yeah. But your friend's dad is fair game. Like, you can be so into your friend's dad.
Cool.
Yeah. So I think it's just fun. You know, it's a little bit stretched of what I think a real person would behave like, but I find it weirdly more believable because they like weirdly latch on to each other's dads as like being totally cool, fun people.
Yeah. Like, they could, like, add in one more line. It's like, they both go, like, man, your dad's so cool. Like, that would have been fun.
Right, yeah,
They
exactly.
do, like, that in unison talking that they do.
Yeah.
Yeah, but, like, oh, God, I love Billy and Thea so much in this movie. I love when they go back, because they kind of, I feel like this movie tries to do both excellent adventure and bogus journey at the same time. Where so the girls are kind of doing the excellent adventure while the guys are kind of doing the bogus journey, and they come back and do Face the Music is what happens.
Right.
But
but that's honestly.
I love,
You're sorry. Go ahead.
well, I was just going to say, I love, it's not, what they do is different than Excellent Adventure because it's, first of all, it's the B plot, so we're not focusing on them as much.
Right.
But I do really love how they interact with the people that they go back in time for differently, because they're not going back in time for every reason for history, they're going back specifically for music. So for them to go back to, like, Jimi Hendrix and be like, oh, well, Jimi Hendrix was inspired by blah, 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 so we can get him, and he was inspired by blah, 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 and, like, how they can, like, use their knowledge of music to, like, build off of each other and make this kind of weird, kind of, like, through line through history of music is, like, really cool, and I really enjoy it.
Yeah. No, I think that's cool,
but
too.
It's not Excellent Adventure.
There was a part of me, I really thought where they were going with it was like, oh, Bill and Ted didn't actually, like, save the world all at once through one song. Maybe they just used their, like, what I thought they were, like, building up to was, like, Bill and Ted just are just very talented musicians, and they inspire a next generation of musicians who inspire a next generation of musicians after that, like, building a tapestry and, like, making the world a better place through just the generalized idea of music, and their role in it is very important, just like Jimi Hendrix or Louis Armstrong. That's what I thought they were doing. Turns out what they were doing is doing a lot of extra work to make it exactly make sense how one song at one time could perfectly unite the universe, which I also don't like.
It's that is a clunky beat. We keep going back to Will Ferrell's. I can't think of what's the movie called about Eurovision.
Oh, Eurovision Song Contest: The Story of Fire Saga.
Fire Saga, that's it. We keep going back to the movie of, like, because that movie's, like, the perfect example of where something happens and it's not that good, but because it is, like, the culmination of, like, things that are established, it, like, makes you cry, and it's very effective, even if the thing itself is, like, so cliche or, like, not actually very well developed, but just, like, hits the right thing, so it is like, effective, even if it's not effective, but, like, them all, like, just singing the song together is still super effective, even if they get there in a weird way, and maybe it's a little sloppy, it's still, you're like, it's good.
Right. Okay, so 2 points. First of all, I think that, because, I don't know, I think that's something I like about the first two movies, is just, the premise is inherent, like, how goofy it is that you could play a concert and sing one song, and because of that instant, that is when the future becomes a glorious metropolis, because of your stupid rock and roll song. Like, there's a certain absurdity to that is just inherently funny. But if you go forward and you provide a convoluted sci-fi premise for actually how that could really happen, it's like, I don't want that. I want them to play a song at a concert at one time and everybody in the world to come together and decide that they love each other. That's what I want to happen, literally. That's what I think would be funny. It's like, trying to make a more realistic version of that, I think, is too much work for a worse payoff. But also, I think, I mean, what you said, it's kind of trying to do Excellent Adventure and Bogus Journey, which I'm not really very inspired by, because, like, Bill and Ted 1 is like, what if we went through history and got famous figures so we could do blah, blah, blah. It's, like, all about them going through time. And then Bill and Ted 2 is, like, so much weirder, where they're like, what if we died and went to hell and then went to heaven? We're, like, exploring the afterlife and, like, different facets of it. It's, like, totally different thing that still sort of expounds on the same goofy
idea,
science fiction premise, right? And then with the third one, they're like, what if they went back in time to get famous people and also went to hell? What if we just did both of them in one? Is that anything? And I'm like, I mean, I guess.
Well, and I mean, I do feel bad for them a little bit, because The second one is so weird. I don't know how do you top that? It's so weird. What are they supposed to do?
Yeah.
They already died. What do you want? We can't do anything else.
Again. I mean, I don't know. Think about it. If you were pitching Bill and Ted 3, what would be your like bonkers gonzo third installment be? Like they traveled through time, they traveled to the afterlife. What do you do next? I mean, going through space and talk to aliens would be cool, right?
Well, I think the logical next step would be like alternate universes, which they kind of they dance around alternate universes in this one because they keep saying like there are infinite pasts that are connected to infinite futures, and like these futures that you are seeing aren't necessarily the future that you'll get if you do things right. And it's like, okay, I get that. So we're dancing around alternate universes in order to still be talking about time travel, weirdly, you know?
Yeah.
So, like, I feel like if you just kind of stuck with alternate universes... Yeah. I think alternate universes are a slippery slope. As anyone who's heard me complain about Bioshock Infinite can attest to, is that you have to be careful... Because there are ways that you can do alternate universes where you do something and then nothing matters anymore, because you can just go to an alternate universe where you've already done something. And that would kind of be the plot point, would be like, oh, let's go to an alternate universe where we did figure it out and just go ask ourselves. Like, you think that's going to be, like, and then they go to an alternate universe where they got arrested and they went to jail, or they go to an alternate universe and, like, oh, they're Martians. Like, so, like, that feels like what they would do. And it would kind of be, like... sidestepping the plot holes of alternate universes by just being like, no, the plot is the plot hole, basically.
Yeah, no, that rules.
Yeah,
it could sort of be like, what's that Simpsons episode where Homer keeps going back in time to dinosaur times and coming back and everything's ruined? It's one of the Treehouse of Horror episodes where it's like every time he goes back in time he accidentally steps on something. It would be like that, except every time Bill and Ted like jump into an alternate universe, they're like, oh, this one's mostly normal, but then people have weird tongues or whatever. They're like, I don't know, should we just settle on this one? Is that close enough?
Is this one good? Or like there would be like an emotional beat where they like find the perfect alternate universes. It's like, oh, but in this perfect universe you don't have your daughters, and they're like, oh, but we love our cool daughters, and then they leave and they try to find one. Yeah.
Remember in that episode of The Simpsons?
That would be my pitch.
Remember that in that episode of The Simpsons where Homer just gives up and goes back in time and starts fucking beating the shit out of a whole bunch of dinosaurs and like chopping down trees and stuff? It's really good.
Exactly.
Kate has a good pitch, which is they could say like all the universes are also like part of the universe, and like part of their work has to be like saving people in other universes, not just their own universe. That could be something cool too.
Yeah, just because there's alternate universes doesn't mean that this universe doesn't exist, kind of.
Right,
it doesn't matter, you know?
All the universes count. They are a real thing.
Yeah. Exactly,
Yeah, cool stuff. See, that is the kind of stuff I want out of this, and not just what if it was both of the previous movies.
What if it was both the movies? Yeah. I mean, I love... That's another weird thing that we, like, kind of establish and then never come back to, where that robot is maybe that girl's ex-boyfriend. Is maybe him come back to life. What's up with that robot?
Well, that robot cranks me up. He looks like a robot from that robot is
so funny.
Jonathan Hickman comic book. It's so good.
Yeah. And I love it when he, like, accidentally, like, lasers the whole B team, and he's just like, oh no.
Yeah, that's really
no.
funny.
Just like,
see, because that's the thing.
So long.
That's the thing about this movie, is that for all the things that I've been complaining about, the reality is still that it's pretty funny and very charming and fun to watch pretty much the whole time, right? And as much as there are things about it I was disappointed by, I still, like, had a good time, and I'm glad I watched it, and I'm, like, happy it exists in a certain kind of way. I wish it was more along the same trajectory set up by the first two movies, you know?
Yeah, no, totally. I love when they go to hell and they're like, yo, where's their daughters? And those two devils are like, oh, they were super nice. They went over that way. And then the robot comes by and they're like, why is there a robot in hell? Just like these two like totally nonchalant demons who are just like, hey, what's up, man? Like, it's just, it's stuff like that that's very funny.
If we want, I mean, a lot of the notes I have written down are just moments that I thought were funny.
Yeah,
if we
there's
can,
a lot of good goofs in this movie.
like, do some of that. The song they play at the beginning.
Welcome to the
at
goof
the
zone. We're just gonna talk about the goofs.
Yeah, this is where it becomes the Chris Farley show. We're like, remember when he did that? That was awesome.
This is the part of the podcast where we just recite vines that we think are funny. It's like that, but for in the movie.
But I love Keanu playing the theremin, and there's that moment where he like picks it up off the floor and starts like swinging it at Ted, like playing theremin music with like with like Bill. Keanu is Ted, Alex Winters is Bill.
Yeah.
Where he like just like picks it up off the floor and starts swinging it at Bill's head, like playing the theremin with your bandmate's
like it's like
head.
how you would like with the guitar.
Yeah.
It's really good.
Really funny. And I'm glad that like the way they pitch it in the trailer is like, oh, and then they just play some fucking garbage. That's not music. But I like that in this, in the movie, it is like a song. It's like a weird song that's not very good.
Yeah.
And like pretty esoteric and weird. But it like is music that I believe that somebody would write, you know? Which I think is just important. Because it's really hard. It's one of those things that movies do sometimes where it's like, oh, it's like fucking Ross on Friends, you know? It's like, in a lot of stories, you don't buy that somebody would make that and be like, pretty cool, right? Like, nobody would think, even if you're making that thing, you would never think that was cool, you know?
Just to be clear, you're talking about the episode of Friends where Ross gets into keyboard music like he was in high school, but it's all just like animal sound effects and helicopter noises, correct?
Right, yeah.
You have to explain that reference. You can't be like, it's like Ross from Friends.
That's like a reoccurring Friends joke, isn't it? It's not just the one episode.
They make jokes that he was like into music in like high school and college, but like the joke that it's like all helicopter noises is only in that one episode.
Which, and maybe I shouldn't use that as an example, because that's pretty funny. But, like...
It's pretty funny.
It just depends on the circumstances.
He keeps, like,
I feel
hitting,
like if Bill and
beats
Ted...
for, like, emphasis, but it's, like, a moo sound effect. It's pretty funny.
But, like, I feel like if Bill and Ted went up there and played helicopter noises, like, I wouldn't buy that. I'd be like, I don't think these guys would think that is cool. It's like music. It's weird music, but it is music. Anyway. There's this moment where... they're kind of thinking about breaking up when they're in the garage, like having that conversation, like, what if this isn't going anywhere? What if we were wrong? And Keanu's like, but what about Bill is like, oh, but what about our fans? And Keanu's like, I think Bob and Wendy will understand. Like, it's just really funny.
He's like
they're
Bob
two,
and
those
Wendy
aren't
will get it. We haven't heard from
Stacy
Stacy in like 10 years. And it's like, those are their 3 fans. They know them by name, which is relatable.
Let's look at our chat right now. Let's see who's chiming in. But
as much as we don't like the end of this movie where it's like, oh, everyone throughout time plays along and that's how they learn to love, the payoff of that, which is Jesus Christ playing the cowbell, is very good. It's a very good goof.
I like that also. There's the moment where they go back to the present to talk to their wives after they find out that everything's bad in the future between them. And they're like, we went, just like they have this like breathless description of like shitty future them where they're like, we went to the future and they said that we were divorced and they sucked and they were really mean to us. It's like just, it's in the delivery is really funny.
Like a lot. Yeah, it's really good. That whole, I wish they did a little bit more goofs with the couples therapy, because I think that's so funny, where they go to couples therapy and the lady's just like, don't you think it's a little weird that your wives separately brought up the idea of couples therapy and yet you two showed up here together? Do you not see how that's weird? And they're like, nah, bruh. It's a very funny scenario.
Yeah, it's pretty good. It's a pretty good comic
But I feel like they don't. Yeah, it's a good comedic bit. But I feel like they don't play it up as much as they should. And then they just kind of like, it just kind of becomes a plot point that they're in couples therapy rather than the joke being that Bill and Ted and their wives are in couples therapy. And they never poke fun at the fact that Bill and Ted's wives never separate either, and also tend to say we, like,
right.
They never hold up the mirror, and I think it's funny, and they don't.
I think it's kind of interesting how, like, in the first two movies, they're very much meant to be these, like, totally, like, vacuous teenagers. And it's like, when they do stupid things, you, like, kind of buy that they're not thinking it through, and they, like, just don't really have the intelligence to come up with a better plan than what they did. But, you know, in this movie where they're, like, 50, it's harder to buy that. But I think they thread an important... I think they thread an important needle, which is, like, all the problem solving they do in this movie is super frantic. And it doesn't feel like they're just stupid. It feels like they're just moving at 1,000,000 miles an hour and they don't have time to, like, really think through what they're about to do.
Yeah,
and that's
it feels
why
like they're overwhelmed
and
they have a deadline.
Yeah,
that's why the thing is, like, we have to do something that they wouldn't remember. And they're like, bucket on our head. And then they just go. Like, they don't have time to, like... Yeah, they don't have time to, like, be like, is this a good idea? They're like, we have to do it because the police are outside and the world's gonna end in 20 minutes. So they're just like, we gotta go.
Yeah. Although I think in all the times when they are, when Billy and Thea are, like, going back in time and, like, rounding up the musicians to help inspire their dads, like, there's a lot of cool stuff in those, but I don't... We talked a lot about why we like the performances from the actors who play all the ancient people in Bill and Ted, because they are so naturalistic and unaffected. Like, those performances are so weirdly grounded and, like, subdued. Yeah. They don't feel... In a movie where everything is big and ridiculous, all of the historical figures are, like, super restrained, and there's something hilarious about that. And I don't think this movie quite nails that as well. Like, I think Jimi Hendrix is really good, but the guy who plays Louis Armstrong is, like, giving such a weird, affected performance where he's like, hey, I'm Louis Armstrong. And you're like, I don't buy this. Like...
Yeah, to be fair, I don't know enough about Louis Armstrong to be like, that's a bad impression, but it feels like a bad impression.
I don't even care if it's a good impression. I just don't believe that he's, like, a real guy, you know?
A real person, yeah. And I do think they do choose a weird collection of people. And I would argue that they maybe go... too far back in time. I mean, there's also the problem that it is the B plot, so we're not focusing on that as much, so we don't see the historical figures as much, so we don't get as many good goofs as we did in the original movie, because, like, that was pretty much the A plot was the thing going on with the historical figures. But, so, like, the girl on the lady who plays the drums, I can't remember her name because it's, like, Thok or something, but... Yeah,
the caveman.
Like, yeah, I feel like that was too far back in time. I think it's funny that, like, Mozart, like, I think it's funny that Mozart, like, likes her, and, like, every time they're, like, standing next to each other and he's, like, holding her hand or something, I think that's funny and cute, but, like, like, nobody else has any character interactions, nobody else does anything else, and, like, the lady who plays the flute is, like, it's like, oh, we didn't even think that she existed, because she's so far back in time, but it's like, not only is she so far removed, it's like, I don't know. I feel it was just a weird cast to choose. Yeah. Especially because we wouldn't have time to develop them fully.
Right. And that's the slippery slope of that, because, like, the reality is that, like, real structured written music wasn't really a thing until, like...
For that long, yeah.
Like, medieval times, basically. And I might be missing out on something, but, like, the idea of, like, music not just being an
repeatable music.
Yeah, like, not just being, like, an improvisable sort of communal experience, instead being, like, notated and written and performed was, like, way back in, like, you know, like, monasteries and monks and stuff like that were the first people doing that. Yeah. As far as I know... my worst fear is that somebody's going to be like, actually, in Africa, they were doing it forever, and you just don't know, because you have a whitewashed version of history, which may be true. I guess I just want to get out in front of that. From what I know, the earliest examples that I am aware of is, like, monks in England, like writing and notating music. But yeah, so anyway.
I guess they are monks.
Yeah, point is like, I think... Go ahead.
This is totally unrelated, and we can cut it out of the podcast, but, like, whenever I think of monks, I always think of, like, in Indian culture or, like, Asian cultures. I guess, like, the Friar Tuck guy, he's a monk, right?
Yeah, they're monks. It's the same thing.
They're monks. I get, yeah. Do nuns count as monks?
No,
because it's like the same thing, kind of. Are they a different thing? But like it's like the same. It's like,
I mean, the structure of religion was very different 1,500 years ago.
No, that's not true. Jackson is the same. It's all the same.
But anyway, yeah. Anyway. Having any person who lives in any society ever being like, oh, I really look up to this caveman, is like, no, let's not do that one. Like, I don't
think that's how that works.
Yeah.
Anybody who existed after cavemen existed wouldn't be like, oh, that one caveman? That's not how that works.
No.
We forgot them.
And it's like, it's a weird thing because as much as I love these things that are just goofy and don't make sense in these movies, I weirdly don't want the historical figures to be a part of that. Part of the thing that makes the first movie so funny is that the historical figures are played so straight and so realistic, even though the rest of the movie is so goofy. That's what makes that work. So when that goofiness starts to leak into the historical figures in this one, it doesn't have the same effect. Maybe we're crazy, but I feel like we agree on that. Yeah.
No, I totally agree on that. Okay. Yeah, I think there's something lacking. Like, I love... The only thing that's kind of, like, similar to that, we don't get a lot of character moments, period. I think one of the few character moments that we do get that I really like is, like, that kind of, like, musical duel that Jimi Hendrix and Mozart have. I think that scene's really fun. Because at first Mozart's like, what the fuck is happening? But then he's like, I could play the piano better than this motherfucker. I just love how, like, the energy of the scene evolves. And, like, at the end, when he, like, comes up to see Jimi Hendrix, he's just, like, a little bit pissed off. He's like, who the fuck is coming in here and playing my music better than me? And, like, walks out. Like, I love that little scene, but that's, like, the only scene we get like that.
Yeah. There's not enough
There's also that rapper dude who's here, who's, like, a real person. Who, first of all,
Cudi.
I don't know who he is. Sorry. Yeah. I don't listen to modern music. But, like,
he's not, like, an especially popular musician.
He doesn't do any music in the movie. He doesn't even, like, rap or do any music. Yeah. They just, like, ask him some questions about space-time, which is pretty funny. But, like, he never does any music for a musician.
Yeah, I mean, sort of the joke is that Kid Cudi is, like, this, like, 22-year-old rapper, but he, like, knows more than anybody about quantum physics, and they keep coming to him with quantum physics questions, which I think is pretty funny.
Yeah.
I can't help but think that, like, the whole thing would play better if it was, like, Kendrick Lamar or, like, Jay-Z.
Yeah.
Like, I think that like, bit would play so much...
Even Lil Nas X, like...
Yeah. Like, if it were somebody...
Pick one that we know.
Yeah, if it were somebody that I, like, genuinely could believe, like, oh, they had a monumental impact on music going forward, I'd be like, not only is this funnier, but it also just works better in the in the story. I mean, and obviously it would be very hard to get Kendrick Lamar to be a supporting actor in fucking Bill and Ted 3. I understand that. I'm just saying it would have been better.
Yeah, I'm just saying.
I'm sure Kid Cudi was the best they could get.
Anybody who's done a concert in Fortnite would probably do it.
Yeah, or like Travis Scott. Relevance. Yeah, like Travis Scott would be funny. Anyway,
just pick somebody funnier.
Yeah, exactly. I also think that there's also this moment where they're talking to themselves in the mansion, and they like pull guns on themselves, and they're like, "Oh, whoa, you don't have to pull a gun on us." They're like, "Oh, really? We don't? Well, look what happens when we don't." And they put the gun away, and the other two just start running immediately, and they put the guns back up. They're like, "See?" It's just a good bit.
We do have to.
Yeah. It's like a very, like, 30 Rock style joke, and I just think it's funny.
Yeah, it's very funny. Well, it's the two parts of this movie that, like, got me, like, emotionally for some reason. Because they make the joke where, like, Ted Bill sees other Bill and he like hugs him, and then Ted sees other Ted and he's like kind of like awkward around him. So it's like it's one of those plot points I don't like really play around with. It's like, oh, Ted's got some issues with his own self-esteem and how he sees himself. Like, that's rough. But like that scene where they're talking to like them on like their deathbed, and like that scene where like Ted's like to younger Ted, he's like, I'm so sorry when I let you down, and Ted's like, you never let me down, man. It's like, oh, why am I crying? Why is this so compelling?
Right, yeah.
It's like, oh, that's really good.
And like, I like that. I don't know, I think that is the best part of the movie, is all the goofy stuff where they're going further forward in time and meeting themselves in increasingly hilariously bad circumstances. It's like the first time they go forward, they're like living in a van and they're divorced and they're like, oh no. And the next time they're like totally like homeless con artists who are like pretending to live in Dave Grohl's mansion and like pulling guns on themselves. They're like, oh shit, that's even worse. And the next one they go forward, they're in prison and they're both like super jacked and like tattooed all over themselves. And they're like, this is how bad it's gotten. They're like, oh no. So I think all of that.
Oh, fuck.
And it's like, all of that is like weird, goofy time travel stuff that doesn't like totally make sense unless you think it through all the way. And that is, I think, like the heart of what I wanted this movie to be. And there is some of that in this part, which I think is great. So I don't know. I guess I don't want to diminish that is my favorite part of the movie. Like, that stuff is all great to me.
Yeah. It's good. It's good stuff.
Yeah. What do you think about...
Jackson, I think you actually like this movie.
No, I mean, I don't know. I mean, like I said, I'm very annoyed by all the
I
don't. that I have said I don't like. What do you think about Kristen Shaw being in this movie?
Yeah. I don't know actor names. Who is that?
Louise.
Oh, yeah. See, her presence just immediately takes me out of all movies. Yeah. Because I'm immediately like, oh, it's her. Instead of being like, oh, here's a character. I'm like, oh, no. Oh, it's her. Like, you know. Like, I feel like she is one of those people that, like, in animation, she doesn't take me out of it because it's a level of separation. I'm not looking at her because she's a good voice actress and she's good at making herself sound different. But she's got such, like, the way that she sounds is, like, so specific that whenever she plays a character, unless she's changing her voice in some way, which she usually is for animation, it's just like, oh, it's Kristen. Like, there's no...
Right.
There's no way around it. It's her.
Yeah, and I think, I don't know. I don't think she was the right pick for that role in this movie. I think...
Yeah, I don't believe her as Rufus's daughter. And I think it's solely because I recognize her as an actress, you know?
Yeah. Not only do I not... I mean, I don't know. It's a weird thing to say because, like, Kristen Shaw is obviously not, like, a A-list movie star that, like, everybody in the world would recognize. Only people who are, like, fairly invested in, like...
She's
culture.
In a lot of stuff.
Yeah, but she's not, like, a household name, is what I'm trying to say.
That's fair. Yeah.
And I also think that there are probably some actors in the first two Bill and Ted movies that we might know if we lived in 1990. Granted.
Yeah.
But in general, I think that a lot of what is charming about the first two is how little star power there is attached to them, you know? It's like this weird thing where it's like it weirdly just sort of... I don't know. It has a weird effect on the experience in the sense that we talked about it with the historical figures, but with everybody else too, there's a certain believability to just like not knowing the names of all the actors besides, you know, the two leads.
Yeah, I mean, it does make it feel more real because it doesn't, like, not to say that, like, oh, it's reality because I don't know.
Right.
Like, I still know it's a movie with actors, but like there is... We've talked about before that, like, when you see an actor, it's hard. You can't separate that actor from every other character that they've been. You kind of have to like acknowledge it and move on and accept them as something new now. So, like, not having to do that at all with the original Bill and Ted is so cool, because you're just taking in new information and new characters without having that kind of double think in the back of your head. Like, you don't have to go, oh, that's Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson as George Washington. You can just be like, oh, that's George Washington, you know? Yeah. And I think Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson should have played George Washington.
See, and that would have been funny. I don't know.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know.
You can't say that. You were saying the opposite.
But yeah, I don't know. And I'm getting in my own head about this line of criticism because, like, it's weird. I think that, you know, what you're describing is a real effect, but I also think that it's, like, in Bill and Ted, the world is very goofy except for the historical figures. And, like, I'm just trying to figure out if I'm only saying that because the first Bill and Ted was that way. If I actually believe that in the abstract, or if I just want it to be more like the first Bill and Ted. Does that make sense?
I mean, I think it's a fair criticism to say about a sequel of Bill and Ted that you want it to be like the way that Bill and Ted felt. I think that's a valid criticism. Whether like if you would say that about another movie, I think doesn't matter because we're talking about a sequel to Bill and Ted.
Right. Let me look at my notes. Oh, the guy who plays Death is so funny in both of the movies that he's in. He fucking kills it. And if we can go back to Bogus Journey for a second, like the scene where they're beating Death at all these stupid games is so fucking
like
good.
Twister.
Yeah. It's like playing on this whole like Seventh Seal thing where they're like, you have to beat me in a challenge, and they choose like Battleship, and then they just cut to like this is from not from this movie, from the last one, but they cut to Bill and Ted and Death on opposite sides of this long table playing Battleship, and you can hear the like sound editing of like the little click clack of the little pegs on the board like echoing super loudly in the giant chamber. It's so funny.
I love it when the joke is that they keep beating him at games, but he's like, oh, best one out of whatever, like, oh no, I have to play again. That's like the recurring joke, so they keep playing like more and more ridiculous games until he's like, all right, you beat me. But they just have this shot where it's like a montage of like all the different games, and there's a shot of just like a zoom in on like those old like football like hover games where you would like rotate the guys around and you would like play football, I guess. I don't even know what the rules for those things were, but it's just like a zoom in on one of the pieces as it like glides across the floor, and then you can just see like Death's face like so close, and then he just like gets so pissed and like he like tosses the whole game. So it's like, it's good. It's really funny.
And he's so good at playing the like gravitas in his like opening scene of like really truly like being Death and feeling like this figure that's like imposing and scary, and then just slowly but surely wearing away at that until he becomes the bassist in their band, you know, in a way that doesn't feel like there's like a substantial jump at any point. He just like he glides into it so perfectly.
And he's like, yeah, my ass is pretty nice also, thank you. And it's like, okay, Death, whatever you say. But it's like,
he's just also good in this movie. He's doing the same kind of thing.
Yeah, he's got the vibes. And I think this is just from me experiencing my own circle of pop culture with me. Like, he feels like when people make fun of Lord Voldemort, like, in a funny way, like, he feels like that. But, like, he feels like he does it so effectively where, like, he does start as, like, this imposing, like, serious character. But then when you make that stupid, it's so much funnier. Like, when he's, like, wearing the dress, and he goes up to God, and he's like, they beat me, I'm sorry. Like, it's so funny. Like, it's just a total, like, destruction of a serious character into something silly. It's just so satisfying and humorous. It's funny.
I think we're just about...
joke good enough?
I think we're just about ready to wrap
now?
up. But, Adeline, last thing I want to ask. What did you think of the credits?
I really liked it. Like, it's
Do you?
very.
I didn't like it at all.
Over.
I thought it was the
over
totally
the
wrong vibe.
It maybe was wrong. I don't know. I thought it was sweet. So basically, they do that thing where it's like, what saved the world wasn't a song. It was all of us playing together, and it ends. And then they have like this like montage of like different people like on their like recordings of different people like playing music and dressing up as Bill and Ted and like all these things and like dancing and like maybe it's the wrong vibe, but I liked it. It was sweet. I needed it. Listen, it's 2020. It was just nice to know that humanity still exists. I liked it.
Okay. All right. Fair enough.
Was it pandering? Maybe. Was
it was
cheesy?
just like,
yes.
Yeah.
Did I like it and cry a little bit? Also, yes. So
I just thought it was. I just thought it was the wrong kind of cheesy. Like, I'm all for it being like cheesy and sweet at the end. It felt like incongruous. It was not same energy. It was different energy.
You didn't like the Weezer song over the credits?
The Weezer song's fine. I don't know.
It's a pretty good Weezer song. I like it. It's a good Weezer song.
Oh, and the post-credit scene.
I thought that was funny. I mean,
I was so weirded out by it. I thought it was stupid. Like,
well, we live in a world where we expect end credit scenes now, right, even for movies that aren't Marvel movies, and I don't know how that happens, but we just do now. Even for movies that like don't get a sequel. Well, they were very popular, but like even for movies that like aren't gonna get a sequel theoretically,
right?
Like we still expect them. But I don't know. I thought it was funny. It's just old man Bill and Ted playing the guitar. I just love it where at the end where Bill's like, "I gotta sit down. Sorry." Like it's funny.
It's like literally you just cut back to Bill and Ted as old people from a scene earlier in the movie, and they're like, "Hey, let's get up." And it's like, okay. And they get up and they strap on their guitars and they play a funny guitar solo and they sit back down. And you're like, okay, I guess.
Yeah, it's just funny. I don't know what you want.
What I think was funny is like the opening line of it where he's like, "Ted, are you dead yet?" He's like, "No."
Yeah,
that's pretty good. I'll give it up for that part. But in general, I did not think that post-credit scene deserved to exist. What's the phrase I'm looking for?
No, it's not necessary.
It didn't justify its own existence.
Yeah, exactly. Like every single Disney remake, it did not justify its own existence.
Right. Okay, so Mulan is only home viewing now. They decided not to go theaters. Should we?
I don't want to pay $50 for fucking
It's $30.
Mulan.
We could split it.
But
we
it's
could do $15
it's $40. That's still a lot. That's a lot of money, Jackson.
I don't know. I guess we'll just
see. I get what you're saying, that like it'll be the hot topic, but like
next month, let's see if there's a new release that we want to do. If there's not, maybe we can go back and do Mulan, or I don't know. Maybe we can do. I'm sure there'll be. We could do the new Charlie Kaufman movie on Netflix, maybe, or that movie where Robert Pattinson plays a weird preacher. You know that one on Netflix. Anyway. Doesn't matter. This is a inside baseball discussion that is not for anybody but us. So, I didn't.
We're gonna cut it out of the finished podcast.
Yeah, probably will. I'm gonna look up a review.
Exclusive content.
Yeah. Tune in to see Jackson and Adeline plan the future of the podcast. Not like in an exciting way, just talk about what they should do.
One movie they probably don't want to watch.
Yeah.
Alex Winter aged incredibly. Like, in some shots, he still looks like he's 20. Like, in other shots, like, you can definitely see, like, the wrinkles in his face. But, like, from some angles, he aged really well.
Okay, I found a pretty good one. Yeah, I mean, Alex Winter is a weird guy. Because... like, he was in, like, a handful of movies, like, around Bill and Ted, like, a year or two, like, on either side. And he was very much into... Yeah. We'll probably put this in the podcast. He was very much into, like, sort of... I'm trying to think how to describe the kind of humor I'm thinking of, like, sort of Gen X underground counterculture sort of humor. if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I'm imagining, like, a drawing in a notebook of a guy with a bunch of warts all over his face. Do you get the vibe
like
I'm
the
describing?
Dumpster pail kids.
Yeah, exactly,
no,
like garbage pail kids. And dumpster pail kids. And so he did that for a little while, and then I don't know if it was like because he couldn't get work or because he just decided he didn't want to anymore. He just sort of stopped being an actor for a really long time. But he has always been like really, really politically active. Like, he is like a really super interesting Twitter follow because he basically, I mean, I don't know what he does like for a living, but he has been like a Democratic like political activist for like decades now. Like, he's just been around like as a
long enough.
Yeah, well, I mean, like, he hasn't had an acting career, but that's kind of what his whole deal has been. And now he's coming back for this, which is cool, and I'm happy for him, but it's like I have to wonder like if he wants to be in movies or if he's happy doing whatever he's doing to support himself. He's probably I don't know for certain, but I have a suspicion he could fucking make bank on the like in the con circuit.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I mean, I think I was just gonna. I don't know how like the con circuit is like seen by like people in the industry. If it's like if you're doing really well, do you do the con circuit, or if like the con circuit is like what you do when something has gone wrong?
Right.
Like I don't know how it's seen.
I mean, I think there is a certain kind of person who is not necessarily an unsuccessful artist who is like known for one thing and can't quite like actually get it back together in their own right again. I think of like, I mean, it's a weird example, but Stan Lee is absolutely that. Like, that guy, like the last 10 years has been fucking everywhere. Like, I remember my local comic book store in Vancouver, Washington, like once every 2 years, they would be like, oh yeah, Stan Lee's coming by. He's not like gonna say hi to people because he's a million years old and he might die if you touch him wrong, but like, we're doing this thing where like
if you look at him wrong. Yeah,
he's gonna be here and he's gonna sign a bunch of comic books and you have to kind of give them to us, but he'll come through and he'll sign them. And it was like the comic book store in like Beaverton.
Yeah,
and you're like
the local comic book store.
Okay, I guess
well,
like that's awesome, but like
I mean, part of that I feel like part of that is like end of career stuff, which is different. Where it's like I ain't got nothing left to lose. I'm just gonna go to every single Comic-Con that I can. Like you know.
No,
like,
and the better example I think is Lou Ferrigno. Like, that's one of those guys that I always see on every con poster ever, it feels like. Like, no matter what convention I'm looking at and thinking about going to, like, Lou Ferrigno is always one of the special guests.
Always down to clown.
Yeah, exactly. It's just one of those weird things. I don't know. But I don't know. I guess I shouldn't talk that way because I don't know if Alex Winter has actually been doing that. I should look it up before I just start talking. But I feel like he could. He could definitely clean up on that circuit. So, Adeline, do you want to hear a 1-star review of Bill and Ted Face the Music?
I do. Well, I don't, but I will.
This review comes from Letterboxd.com. This person says, "My son is crying now. Thanks a lot." My name's Jackson McMurray.
My name is Adeline McMurray.
And this is No Nerds Allowed.
There are no nerds allowed. My son's crying now. Thanks a lot. Like,
what? Look what you did to my son.
Is he scared? Don't talk to me or my son ever again. Bill and Ted Face the Music.